Hello everybody, I'm Gary Futcher, Programme Lead for Educating Differently at Real Ideas, and I'd like to welcome you to this 4Cs webinar, focused this time on the work of two Southwest Music Education Hubs and presented as part of our Arts Council England Bridge organisation support. The 4Cs, creativity, culture, connection and community, are at the heart of Real Ideas education and curriculum thinking. Our aim is to outline ideas and practical activity that can be applied, shaped, included within schools, classrooms and communities. Music really does matter in schools, but often requires creative and collaborative approaches to secure its vital and life-affirming place as part of a rich and balanced curriculum. To share the creative good practice of a number of projects and their positive impact on children, staff and the wider community, I'm joined today by Lewis Gibbs, Music Education Hub Lead for Devon and Torbay, and with him is Elfyn Jones from Sonopera, and Clair McColl, who is the Strategic Lead for Dorset Music Service. The whole point of this webinar is to hand over, and the webinar today we're going to hand over to Lewis and then to Clair and to their guests and their their films to share their projects. If you've got a comment to make, if you've got ideas to offer, or you've got a question you'd like to pose to any of the panelists as we go, feel free to submit them via the question function in your toolbar, and I'll come to as many of them as we can in the final part of the webinar. I'm also delighted to say, just coming in at the very last minute, we're also joined by Jason Thornton from Bath Phil, who was having camera problems, so maybe here in voice only, but he'll be joining Clair this afternoon. So without further ado, only 2 minutes in, to give everybody as much time as possible, I'm going to hand over to Lewis, who is going to share the work of their Music Education Hub. Thank you very much, Lewis.
Thanks, Gary, and a big thank you to Real Ideas for inviting us to be part of this webinar today. We're really thrilled to be involved. We're going to talk about two projects that we've been involved in Devon and Torbay recently. I'm going to hand over to Elfyn in a little while to talk about an action research project, a really interesting action research project that Sonopera have been leading on. But first, we're going to talk about a project that we're doing currently with Daisy. That's the Devon Arts in Schools initiative, if you're not familiar with that, and Charanga. And Charanga, if you're a primary music educator, you may well be familiar with. It certainly is prolifically in schools in Devon and Torbay. It's an online learning platform to support primary music curriculum teaching, featuring literally thousands of different resources. You might be less familiar, though, with VIP studio sessions, one of the other apps or resources that Charanga offer, which uses a DAW, or a digital audio workstation, to help young people produce electronic music. And Charanga, using that UStudio DAW, sorry, there's lots of different terminology here, isn't there? UStudio, have been working with schools in the Ilfracombe and Barnstable areas of Devon to help them with producing hip hop and grime music, and supported to do that by Max Wheeler, who is an award-winning grime artist in his own right, and also the driving force behind VIP Studios. So this has been led by Daisy. They've been organising this on our behalf through the Youth Music funded Soundwaves project. And we're going to hear in this video that we're about to share with you from Max Wheeler from Charanga, from Vicky Worthy, Assistant Director of Daisy, who I know is here listening today. So I'm sure we'll hear from her in the chat at some point. And from Bonnie, one of the teachers in North Devon who was involved in this project. So Gary, can we have the video, please?
Hi there, I'm Max Wheeler from Charanga, and part of the team that's been sort of facilitating and delivering project with Daisy and Devon and Torbay Music Hub. It's been a really brilliant project. And yeah, my role's facilitator, so delivering stuff to young people. And at Charanga, I'm part of the team that's been developing the new UStudio music software, which we've been using for the project, and also the VIP resources, which we've been using. And what's been brilliant with this project is I've delivered it so far entirely online, and the teachers in the room have actually been delivering the work. So they've all been creating hip hop beats, creating grime beats, writing rap lyrics, and actually recording raps as well. And the feedback I've had is that they've actually carried on delivering that type of work after the end of the project, and it's now quite kind of embedded in the work they're doing in those schools. So that's been amazing to see. In terms of what worked, I mean, I think for me, one of the things I was really excited to see was that we had whole class music making at Key Stage 2. So we had, across multiple schools, we had whole groups of students creating beats on Chromebooks, on mobile devices, creating their own pieces of music and actually working independently doing that. I think for me to see that at Key Stage 2 is really exciting, because it means we're actually starting to get composition, electronic music making, grime, hip hop, these kind of new exciting styles of music actually embedded at Key Stage 2. And I think that's going to mean that those young people are able to access composition in Key Stage 3 and at secondary school much more easily. And one of the upsides to that is, like I say, the fact that having delivered this remotely, I think the teachers are telling me they're actually really confident to do this kind of work going forwards, because they've already done it. They've already delivered it themselves. They've had some support from me, but I mean, to be honest, they've done an amazing job. I've been absolutely blown away by how well they've done. And what's great is that this is one of the first projects we've delivered in Key Stage 2, and using the beta version of the software. So those students in Devon have actually been some of the first primary students in the whole world to try out the software that you can see behind me over my shoulder. So it's had a big direct impact in that it's been part of the testing of the software. And actually, I'm kind of talking to Charanga now about turning some of what we've done in this project into a series of resources that could be used, you know, potentially all over the country, even all over the world. So, I mean, for me, it's been absolutely brilliant project. Massive thank you to the Music Education Hub, and also to Daisy, everyone who's been working on the project. It's been, yeah, been a real pleasure. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming down to meet some of the young people, see the teachers and hear some of the beats and raps and stuff that they've been recording. So yeah, thanks.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Braley and I teach at 3 primary schools which are all in the same trust, Pilton, Bluecoat, Brayford and Umberley. I am the music PPA teacher, so I planned and delivered a term's worth of studio VIP lessons at the end of last year, 12 weeks altogether. The children absolutely loved using Studio VIP. It's hard to do composing in whole class lessons in primary schools due to noise levels of 34 children with instruments. So we do it, but it is hard. You can't use the hall because of PE lessons, you can't go outside because it's raining and all those kind of problems. So to be able to wear headphones and spend a whole unit of work composing was really great, and the children absolutely loved the genre of music. We did hip hop. Initially I thought that the children would all follow the series of short video tutorials one by one in order to create their tracks, and then they could go at their own speed, and I thought that would be great. However, they did find that hard to do. They just ignored the videos and went off and did their own thing, which was sometimes really good, as some of them quickly learned more about Studio VIP than I did. And some of their music sounded amazing, but it meant that they didn't learn the process of how to put a track together properly. So then I had to change how I taught it. I watched the tutorial videos myself before each lesson, and I delivered it to the whole class myself, instead of making sure that everyone followed each step before we moved on to the next step. What's been the biggest impact? Definitely their composition skills, having a beginning, middle and end, and having a structure to their piece. Definitely teamwork, and I was really impressed at how the pairs work together. And even if one child was more technical than the other, they all inputted into the creative aspect of their tracks. Their musicianship definitely improved, keeping in time with the beat, which lots of children always find hard. Talking about nodding your head to keep the beat, choosing someone to count you in, 1, 2, 3, 4. And evaluating and improving their work, they had to do lots of by making changes if a track didn't work and working out why it didn't work. I'm pleased I made myself have a go at using Studio VIP. I'm not the best at using technology. I So this training and programme has enabled me to teach a genre that I would not have considered teaching before, and the children really love it.
So a little bit about that project. Obviously, we don't have a huge amount of time to discuss these things in depth today, but for me, some of the real benefits of this project, which really was born out of necessity in terms of the impact of COVID, that you know, this has all been delivered remotely, but a really fantastic opportunity to give primary and secondary teachers on the ground input from a music practitioner like Max, who's delivered all of this remotely through the project. It's been really valuable for them, and for me, that's one of the real benefits. We're talking to Chiranga now, along with Daisy, about how we can expand on the success of this project, which really has been a pilot. And some of the avenues that we're looking at is developing into a transition project between primary and secondary schools. The U Studio DAW will soon be available as part of Chiranga Musical School, and we'll also be offering Chiranga Secondary as a package for our secondary schools in Devon and Torbay. So there's a real opportunity for secondary schools to work with their incoming year sixes, perhaps in the summer term, get to know their music teachers in the secondary school, and for those secondary music teachers to support what's going on at a primary level. So a real transition project in its truest sense. So that's how we're hoping to develop that. Obviously, not many primary practitioners have much experience of grime or hip hop music, so that's also been a massive benefit. Yeah, we're really pleased with how that project has worked out. We're going to go on now to our second project, which we're going to talk about, creativity through music. As I said, an action research project delivered by Sonopera in partnership with Plymouth University and Devon and Torbay Music Education Hubs. And we're going to start with a video, and then we're going to hear from Elfyn Jones about this.
Sonopera is a community interest company that creates and produces performance and education projects using music and sound. One of our ongoing projects is Creativity Through Music, working in partnership with United Schools Federation in Devon and funded by Devon and Torbay Music Education Hub and University of Plymouth Institute of Education. We have a creative team of 3, Ruth Atkinson, Kip Pratt and me, Dr. Elfyn Jones. In this project, we are facilitating each school in the Federation to develop their own different creative project, using a model of appreciative inquiry. Ruth is also running her own research project alongside the practical work in schools to capture good practice. This will be published later as an academic paper. We began with a pilot in summer term 2021 at Dodderscumsley Primary School in the Tean Valley. They decided to celebrate the school's beautiful setting and its status as a rights-respecting school in a project that combined music and visual art.
I think them really noticing how they could combine the art and music together, and then obviously as the project went on, building in rights respecting learning and other things like that. But they really enjoyed that. They'll be able to think back to that song, and I know Lisa's really continuing it, so it's not just a project that we've done and that's it. We've kind of drawn a line under now. It's really nice to keep coming back to it, and she's still able to do that alongside their curriculum learning as well.
Since then, we've visited another 3 schools. One ongoing project seeks to engage with older members of the community through storytelling and song.
This is a picture of me and my brother. Tell me what's a bit weird about that bike.
It has really high handlebars.
Exactly.
Another is developing the school's identity through its music ensembles, while the third focuses, like Dodderscumsley's, on children's rights, again bringing together music and visual arts. As the project develops, we can see recurring themes of community and identity that are expressed by the children and their schools, but each time manifested in a different way. We can also see the adults in the schools striving to work together creatively and finding new ways to respond to the challenges of primary education. Yeah, so that's the project. It's an interesting one because it's different from a lot of other projects. It's not just about practitioners going in to schools and delivering something, but it's actually asking the schools themselves to come up with a project and asking them, what do you want to do? And then helping them to do that. So the project itself might not actually be a musical project on the face of it, but through using creativity and particularly musical creativity to underpin the project, then the school can achieve its objectives. And the schools have really loved and embraced the opportunity to do something that they wanted to do rather than something that they've been told to do. And so they focused on really quite important things like values and equality and belonging and pride and feeling good together and voices being heard. And these are things that music and creative music in particular can be a metaphor for. You know, it can be a metaphor for all these things, and the sort of structures that you have about people singing together in a choir, or taking turns, or cooperating, and all that kind of stuff, singing in harmony. They're all metaphors for, if you like, a kind of harmonious society. There you go. It's embedded in the language, and so that's been really good, and it's been really good. It's been really good CPD for the teachers, and also lots of different levels, because another thing about the project is that we've worked not only with the teachers and the children, but also with the management and the head teachers, you know, senior leadership team. Everybody's involved. We've been feeding back to the federation at the top level, if you like, and so one of the things that we're trying to do to help to do is to create this conduit of communication between the different levels. And what we've also found is that schools themselves are really find it really important that the children, because it's the school making the project, that the children are involved in the decisions. Particularly, I think there's at least 2 schools in the federation that are rights respecting schools, so they have this status. I think it's connected to the United Nations, where they are focused on the rights of the child. It's a very child-centered approach. So we have all of this. All these factors sort of coming into the project. And what that means then is that on the face of it, we've got 7 different projects, 7 completely different things. But what's really happened is that they've focused on the things that really matter. And I think part of that is the, you know, coming back in after the pandemic. You know, or trying to, at least, coming back in and trying to resume normality, or find a new normality, a new sort of way of just trying to glue the community back together again. And that means the school community. It also means the wider community as well. So they wanted to do some quite ambitious things, and so far it's been, I think it's been really, really good. So there's that sort of training thing, if you like. There's the community thing. It shows that you can be creative and still sort of tick the boxes, if you like. So you can use creativity, or you can look for creative solutions to things that you might not think are creative subjects. So that's been a big positive. And I think the schools have been inspired by the process of thinking of what they want to do. And then what we found, Ruth and Kip and me, the practitioners, is that when we go into schools, sometimes we're like grandparents, because it's like that we kind of sit there and kind of applaud and encourage, and we're like sort of mentors and things like that, because the school staff, they've got it covered actually, and we're just giving them permission to do the things that they want to do. And in the sort of funny situation we are in at the moment, there's the post-COVID thing. There's also new structures in education as well. There are federations, and there are multi-academy trusts, and there are, I don't know, multiplex trusts. That'll be the next thing, I'm sure. They're kind of different iterations of these kind of multi-school bodies, and they haven't really bedded in yet. And so there's a sort of a kind of uncertainty about what you're allowed to do sometimes, or sometimes there are things that are said, you know, by the senior leadership team, which are intended to make a whole academy trust work better. And the danger is sometimes they have the effect of kind of stymieing creativity. And what we've found that if we give people permission to follow their own path, then they follow their own path, and the results are really lovely, to be honest, quite touching. So we've ended up with songs which are quite anthemic. We've ended up with music that's very poignant. We've ended up with artwork. We haven't been leading the artwork. It's the schools themselves. They've quite a few of them have put us together with a visual art person in school, or they've wanted to do things that are quite visual. And also it's been something it's been a project that's allowed the schools to engage with their own environments, either the natural environment, if they're like Dodderscombe, if they're out in the countryside, or Stoke-on-Tees Head is another one, near Sheldon, in South Devon. And their approach has been to re-engage with the community. So that was the one with the chopper handlebars and all that kind of stuff. So at different levels, they're sort of doing the same sort of thing, looking at the big picture, and those are they're a common theme. And what we found as creative practitioners, right, maybe is that we've got as much to learn as anybody else, and that's absolutely true, because we're used to going in and doing workshops. We're used to going in and we have fun, and we do things that are valuable for the children. We do things through music. We do things in a creative way. We don't have the restrictions that teachers often have to do with time, curriculum, what the government says, what the academy says, what the local authority says, safeguarding practices, all those different things that have to be juggled in the school day. And so we're understanding the realities of that. And so the whole project really in each school is a negotiation between those kind of boulders and trying to find a way to flow through it elegantly, like little swans, and find the best way through, find a way for children to be heard, and for the big themes to be explored as well. So it's a really interesting project from that point of view. And if you want more information, then there's the Sonopera website, but there's also things on the Devon and Torbay music education hubs, social media as well. So yeah, there we go. That's the project. I don't know if anybody's got any questions from the panel about that.
I'll just jump in a moment, if that's all right, Elfyn, which I was just going to say, I think there's some commonality between this and the other project that we featured today, in terms of, yes, you have the experts in the room, I guess, those practitioners coming in yours and Ruth and Kit's case physically, in Max's case, obviously virtually, they're there to support, but not to take over, and that's something that we spoke about very early on when we were putting this project together. Of there's little point, I think, of having those projects where an expert practitioner parachutes in, does something wonderful, over a few weeks and then clears off, and nothing happens as a consequence of that. You know, what we're trying to do with all hub projects really, and this one is particularly reflective of this, is try to build in CPD to what we do in a creative way, make it easy for classroom teachers to access and to feel supported. So that's something we're trying to do with all of our projects, and I think this as I say is really evident of that.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a question just in the question bar that I'm looking after here, and one of them for you, Elfyn, really is the extent to which you kind of define and are clear about what creativity is and explicit in that, or the extent to which you're kind of just allowing that to evolve. And I guess that's looking at that, it's coming from that space of people thinking about creativity as an essential skill, you know, across schools and across learning.
Yeah, it's actually pinning down what creativity is a bit of a slippery slug, isn't it? I mean, it really is. I think the way we've approached it is through a process of what's called appreciative inquiry. We start with what's there and where we want to get to, and we build on the strengths that we have. And it's about development and process. So it's about building layer on layer, really. I think it really doesn't come out of nowhere. It's kind of, well, what do we want to do? So we want the school to be a community. Okay, well, how can it be a community? How can we do that? Well, who do we talk to? Do we talk to the children? Okay, well, what do the children say? Well, the children say this. They have some phrases that they use. Let's put those together, and then those phrases then become a poem, and that poem then could have a melody, and that melody becomes a song, and that song could have chords, and the chords have been played by a guitar, and all of a sudden it's accretion, like, you know, barnacles upon limpets upon shellfish upon, you know, seaweed and all that. It all becomes like a big thing, and that's kind of how it builds up, I think, and sort of shape it and evolve it and try and gently persuade it in a direction, and also retain some freedom with it. So I think that's how we've approached it, is sort of allowing things to happen as much as anything else, and building on it layer by layer, and seeing the potential. I think that's one of the things about creativity that's really important: seeing the potential in something, seeing the potential in a choice word or phrase, or an image, or a sound, or a point of view. Where could that go, and where can it develop? I think that's how creativity happens. It's one of those things, we recognize it when we see it or when we experience it. And there's a sense that there's a kind of uplift. It's a hormonal thing. there's a sense of emotion about it, I think. So you recognize it when it's there. And I think it's about sort of being open to the possibilities of it. But it kind of goes across all subjects, I think. So it's not confined to music. And so what we're doing in the project is trying to find creative approaches to doing things like that. So I think in one of the schools that we haven't been able to get into yet, not because of COVID, but because of Hurricane Storm Eunice, I think it was, we were, because of the storm warnings, we couldn't go in, but we're going to map out the environment of the school, so there'll be a science element to it. And one of the things we're thinking about is kind of doing the square meter thing that you often do in biology, and find out what's in your square meter. How many worms are there? How many beetles? How many blades of grass do we think there are? How many worm casts? What kind of leaves have fallen into the patch? And so it becomes a scientific inquiry, and then we could talk about the words and the sort of things and the frequency of occurrences and things like that, and then it becomes a kind of rhythm. So it can be a verbal rhythm, or it can be a visual thing. It could be like a chart, or it could be, you know, there are all sorts of different things. Even statistics can sing. You heard it here first. And that's the thing. Yeah, exactly. So you see, so So developing things literally out of the ground, if you like. But that one, that's quite intriguing. That one, that project is also going to have a strong visual arts element, but it's arts environment and with a certain amount of botany. There we go. Hope that's answered the question. To some,
yes, very much so. Thank you. Yeah,
I tried to answer it.
I think that's a really interesting one, Elfyn. In such a, you can always or very often get, music's good because it's really good for well-being, or it can be really good for maths, or really good for literacy, and you know, all of those are true. But music has an intrinsic value in its own right, and it's really interesting to hear you know, that being flipped over. Really, that you know, essentially botany is really good for music. You know, so you're putting it on its head.
Yeah, Bartok knew that. Just look that up. It's a really good text, actually. Yeah, all those spirals, all those naturally occurring shapes and things like that have inspired artists and have inspired musicians for a long time.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Elfyn. Gary, I guess we'll hand back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you very much for that. And we're going to pop over now to Claire and hopefully Jason, who is there in voice only. So Claire, over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We'll get on with our videos, but one thing that struck me already, I hadn't seen Devon's videos, but I can see so much synergy with the two projects that I'm about to present, and writing down even common language, common words, but hey, maybe we can reflect on that later. So yes, hello, I'm Clair McColl, Strategic Lead for Dorset Music Service and Lead for Dorset Music Hub. The first video we're going to present is about creativity through online music mentoring. And this is about some lessons we've learned from a youth music funded project called Inclusive Dorset, where we were piloting new ways of working with teenagers. So we're going to be hearing from Gary and Sean, two music leaders that we were absolutely delighted to recruit for this project, who have been offering online music mentoring, and they're reflecting on their own experience of supporting young people to make their own music through one-to-one sessions online, using a different DAW and various other instrumental interventions. We're also going to hear a little bit from Ryan Jones from Cornwall Music Education Hub, who ran some songwriting sessions for students and CPD for staff. And he's talking briefly about an approach he's developed in Cornwall and that he shared with us as part of this project in Dorset. The thing that links these two elements of the project for me is around how we as music leaders can work with young people to overcome the barriers of different backgrounds and that previous music experiences or limits on those experiences might pose. So yeah, let's hand over to Gary and Sean to tell the story.
So can you talk to us a little bit more about how you've used that digital side of the technology that you've incorporated? So you're using a free online platform, BandLab, right?
BandLab, which blows my mind really. I mean, so I've been recording for years, and now to have this online, this multi-track recording thing with built-in effects, and I mean, it's brilliant, and it's free, and it's great.
We're talking like originally hundreds to thousands of pounds worth of kit and hardware.
Exactly.
Now in a browser, for free,
and you've got samples in there that are all royalty-free samples.
Great packs.
Yeah, and the samples sound incredible.
They do.
Yeah, and what's exciting is that we're at the start of this. So you imagine where we're going to be in 5 years' time. You know, it's going to be absolutely amazing.
So thinking about when we first started, I mean, it was an interesting experience because it was new for the hub. But each student, of course, you don't know what you're going to experience. You've got a little sort of bit of data, a bit of information. Okay, they may be autistic, or they've got these sort of learning difficulties, or this background problem, but not really knowing what we're going to experience. How did you find that?
Yeah. That was, I must admit, I found it very daunting at first. I mean, I'm naturally quite a nervous person anyway, but do you know what? I've loved every minute of it, and it's taken a while to get to a point now where I actually feel confident now to actually say, do you know what? I could do this. I could deliver this online. For me, actually, just seeing confidence grow is such a huge part of this, and it can be life changing for these young people to suddenly, you know, actually gain self belief and. You know, because if we can find a little tiny bit of talent or something that they've got inside them that we can then expand for them, and actually help them grow, I think it's an all-round winner.
Absolutely. And what's great with the digital platforms as well now is that with those banks of royalty-free samples and stuff like that, we have been able to offer music composition to people who don't have those musical skills, so they're still experiencing that musicality. And what's really interesting for us as music practitioners is this powerful set of tools we now have, very inclusive set of tools. And the digital era has kind of opened up the world to a whole new set of people that before perhaps music was excluded. Just because they didn't take to that instrument. When they tried, it just didn't work. Whereas with using something like samples, you can get that sort of that dopamine reward much quicker. Because you can have a professional sounding track together in minutes almost.
No, definitely.
Which is just going to ignite that. I want to do this. And then the desire to put those hours of study in that we as instrumentalists understand.
There is. I think the key ingredient for both of us is that we have a passion for music, and we've always had a passion for music, and it's that kind of getting that passion across to someone online at first can seem quite daunting, but it can happen, and I think the skill sets thing, that's so important to actually kind of figure out your weaknesses and your strengths before you do it, and work as a team.
We, like I say, it didn't come with a set of instructions per se. It came with a sort of more of an outcome, desired outcome than the pathway to achieving it. So we're sort of, in a sense, that's been quite a creative experience.
Yes, very much so.
And that's been part of the fun of it. Is like, okay, how am I going to do it? Right, well, I could do that.
Actually learning from the young person himself, taking part. I mean, I've listened to so many new music tracks.
Exactly.
That I would never have known existed.
No, exactly.
From these young people saying that I want to sound like this. It's like, whoa. That's incredible.
It's keeping us young.
Yes, exactly. No, exactly. And I think it's really kind of actually on a personal level help me grow as well.
My name's Ryan. I'm from Cornwall Music Education Hub. We've been having a lot of the same problems in that we've seen reduction in timetable within leadership team schools, and we've got huge reductions in provision within the community and opportunities for young people to have music lessons. And as a result of that, we're seeing a lot more unskilled young people coming in at Key Stage 3. And also should add, there's primary schools have got a lot less music specialists in the buildings. So those skills aren't coming up and through. So we've put together this effort to try and make leadership teams value music a little bit more. And we've hit upon the idea that language is filled with melody and rhythm and a lot of narrative intention as well in the way that children can speak. So we're using this as a way of convincing young people to identify as musicians without having had all of the other stuff that should have come before. And it's not their fault that they've not been engaged with music, but it's not necessarily the end of the line for a Key Stage 3 student to say you can't take BTEC in music without any music background, because some of them would be able to catch up.
Wonderful. Well, like we say, that was Gary and Sean, our music leaders, reflecting on the work that they'd been doing, in the composition. Some of it was composition, some of it was instrumental tuition, the essential thing that it was being led by the needs of the young person and what they wanted to learn. And as we know, so many school departments are being increasingly, under more pressures to support enrichment activities, and that some local areas, despite the best efforts of hubs and Lewis and myself, there can sometimes be limited opportunities in their localities. So for us, it's about finding new ways to engage with young people in the digital age feels increasingly urgent. I I was trying to sort of frame our conversation talking about, the 3 I's of intent, implementation and impact. So for me, this was all about empowering those young people, and to use Ryan's phrase, to see themselves as musicians, to identify as musicians, because many of their experiences may not have led them to think they could be. And of course, to realise the positive benefits to well-being and sense of achievement that creativity can bring. And in terms of implementation, it was all about working collaboratively with those young people and with their colleagues to reflect and adapt the programme, to be flexible, to adapt the different needs of the young people being met, and to be creative as leaders. I think that's one thing that's come through, the videos so far. It's really encouraging music leaders and teachers to embrace their creativity, to open up and understand that they can make their own rules. And in terms of the impact, certainly we've seen huge confidence of that music leader team. The project overall was in itself a bit of action research in a way. Many youth music projects are about piloting new ways of working in the hope that we can then take what works and carry it on further. So I think certainly we've got a team of music leaders that can work in this new way to support a much wider range of young people. And in terms of the impact on our hub, it's really helped us look at how we can develop those new models of provision in the long term and unleash the creativity of young people and the teachers that work with them. Thinking about the emotions that I think Elfyn was talking about in his presentation, that's what's been so great. I think Gary and Sean are wonderful examples of being really open about the successes and failings, the ability to reflect, that making mistakes are okay and that it's how we learn. It's such an important skill. To be open and honest, and that we're all lifelong learners, and what a wonderful thing to model to our students. I also love the fact that the music leaders were learning themselves. It's a two-way street where the music leaders feel that they are enriched by the process. And as they mentioned, they're learning about new music and what the kids are doing these days. And overall, as I say, it's made me really reflect about what I want Dorset Music Hub to be. And it's made me think we need to be able to do different, but also to do difference, to really understand that young people are coming from a vast variety of backgrounds, interests, skill abilities, and that we need to be able to adapt our system to incorporate all of those differences so that, we can remove the barriers, they can feel successful, particularly if they don't feel successful within the school or formal music education structures. So I think that's it for that first video. I'm happy to introduce our second video. Is Jason with us on the line? No, I can't currently. Hello, Jason.
Hello.
A voice from the gods. Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you with us. So hopefully you can provide a little bit of follow-up on context, because you clearly have huge experience in the realm of creative music making. So this is Jason Thornton, musical director of the Bath Philharmonia, and a creative music leader himself. So the second video I'm going to introduce, which features Jason briefly, was about inclusion through creative ensembles, giving an overview of how creative approaches to group music making can really support more young people on their musical journeys. So you're going to hear from B Sharp, which is a Dorset-based youth music organisation that runs weekly hub jams, informal music and jamming sessions for instrumentalists, vocalists and technicians. You're going to hear Leonie, Harvey and Ruth talk about their approach to leading creative, inclusive music making sessions. And as I say, then you'll hear from Jason talking about their approach. But first of all, we will hear from the B Sharp team talking about how their approach is different from what young people will experience in schools. Take it away, Gary.
The educational way of teaching through schools, I think, is quite heavy on the rules of music. In the sense
agree
of,
with that, definitely, yeah.
Not a right and wrong, but a specific method will always work, but they don't necessarily explore all the methods that work. And I think coming here, quite a few of our individuals maybe don't know music theory, or they don't necessarily understand the rules of music, but they like to noodle, or they like to just play about with their instrument. And we almost make music out of what they do, as opposed to telling them what the rules are and making them use the rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The reason it's there is that it's useful, and you can make music from it, but I think that opening their eyes to the fact that you don't have to use that, and you can actually, there are many other ways to make music than just using the rules. And also pairing them together as well, like showing them without knowing that they're using the rules as well. But starting that process off by being creative and not using the rules.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, isn't there? You kind of get them hooked into something and you get them playing, and then you can say, oh, this is that chord and that's the structure here, and it kind of, it's the sort of backwards way around.
Yeah, you can mention it while you're sort of doing it. But,
they come to us and they may be really good at the other side of it because their brains may work different, or they might not understand the words, but they understand the noises and things like that. If they can't understand the sort of technical terms, but they understand how to play notes, we try and make sure that they know that they can make music that way. They don't have to use, they can use it because that's what's there, but they don't have to use it. They don't have to base what they're doing off that.
Getting them playing quickly together and kind of getting them included, all of them making music quickly also, without rules, means that it's easier for some that struggle to stop, listen, focus. They kind of get absorbed, and then you can kind of lay down the ground rules about listening to each other and stopping.
Maybe also making them feel like as a part of a group. I think that's a really important part, like that they feel like they're part of a group and they feel safe. So, and I feel like if they know they're part of it, it's their part. They sort of remember it anyway because they created it and they know it. So
that's the joy of doing original music, is that the idea may have stemmed from something that they've just noodled at home or noodled in when they're warming up, and we take that one tiny little thing and make it a song, and they're almost like, they probably feel quite special that they've actually started that song off.
The participant who came along last summer and quite shy and not quite sure what to do, and came along to sessions all through and feeling really confident now, being really confident on drums, which is great. So it's been great to see that person sort of grow.
And we often have parents saying, we don't think they'll manage to stay, we don't think they don't settle in sessions, they don't settle at school, and they generally are fine here.
A creative approach to music making is more inclusive because everybody can be involved. When you create your own music, you have an absolute ownership of it, and also it is about you and it becomes part of you as well. We can create some amazing pieces that you wouldn't be able to write down ever. We're not inhibited by having to write things down. We can involve people from so many different sectors. It's just a great way of bringing people together and making fantastic music. This approach can definitely work in the classroom. It just needs to be structured a little bit. I'm currently working on a project called Go Compose, where we're providing a framework to be able to do creative music making in the classroom and making it open access, fun, enjoyable, using all the styles that the kids will love playing with, and also making it applicable to the national curriculum and to the model curriculum too. My passion is to see every music hub in the country having a creative collective where groups of young people come together from whatever background, from whatever style, from whatever genre, and creating their own music together, rehearsing their own music together, and then playing it to a very, very high standard. But most importantly, it's made by them, about them.
Wonderful stuff. And so just briefly, and I'm sure Jason will be open to answering any questions about this way of working, but it feels that some key elements are about getting those quick wins, providing enough structure for young people to start to feel success early, feeling safe, providing that framework, but then enough flexibility to adapt as you need to. And I love that final point Jason made. It's such a common theme about identity. This music is coming from them. It has an extra layer of significance to the young people. and hopefully it can be a vehicle through which they can express things, you know, perhaps explore other ideas. But yes, I think I'll leave it there as we must be running short on time. But I thought, were there any questions about this kind of creative ensemble way of working that Jason could address?
I think what would be nice, Claire, is if because we've actually seen Jason, so it's not here, but we've seen him. Jason, just your reflections, and particularly one of the things that's come in is that little bit around it needs a little bit of structuring. So I think people get that notion of, I think for all of you, the freedom to try and co-construct and create space for young people. But just from I suppose, the school and the teacher's perspective, what does that just a little bit of structuring look like?
I think that, well, hi everyone, and I'm sorry that I haven't got my camera on. It's not working. Anyway, it's good to talk to you all about something that's very, very close to my heart, and diving straight into the idea of a little bit of structure. I think all of us, classroom teachers, us involved in music education hubs or in the wider sector of music making, you know, we all know that inclusion and creativity is going to be the way forward, and is going to be a major part of the new music plan for the nation. But actually, all we're doing is playing catch up with the kids. The kids know this already. So the idea of structuring in the classroom is the idea of putting some meat on the bones. So teachers, that's where the real music making is going to happen, in a classroom on a regular basis. So teachers just need some know-how, how to run the process, how to run an open access compositional process in the classroom using the genres that the kids understand, not getting bogged down in terminologies and notations and all that sort of thing, but playing with sound. And it's on its way. As I said in that video, I'm currently working on Go Compose, which is being evaluated by Phil Mullin, and also working on the idea of having a creative ensemble, having a pathway of creative ensembles. So having extracurricular creative ensembles in the classroom, creative ensembles in school that perform in school and in school concerts, small satellite creative ensembles that feed into a regional creative ensemble. And if that way you're sort of mimicking the pathways that have existed in the past, but in a new medium. And that idea of it being structured, the delivery of it, and the process of creating music out of nothing in an open access environment can be learned, and it can be learned very simply. If I can learn it, anybody can learn it. And that's what we're doing with Go Compose. And as soon as we're doing a pilot project at the moment in Soundstorm, in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, and then we aim to roll it out across the country thereafter.
I think that's it. Just briefly to follow up, I think it's, you know, what's been common is, you know, our use of DAWs and digital technology, and like that can be such a valuable tool to provide sort of component parts that teachers and young people can just start to build things that sound like real songs very quickly, and that then propels them and encourages them. You know, it removes that barrier of that blank page or the you know, soundless void.
I think
before
the key
you know it,
to
they
all
have
of this,
something and they know that they can. They're empowered, I think.
Absolutely. I think the key to all of this is making music of a really high quality. Once you make music of a really, really high quality, involving acoustic and DAW together in a classroom, the kids will invest. Until that day where we make music of a very high quality and give it real value by rehearsing it properly and then performing it, the kids won't invest. And when the kids invest, they really invest, and they'll love it and they'll fly with it.
But yes,
can I ask all of you now, we've got 5 minutes to go, and I think it's been really interesting because all of you watching you haven't seen each other's videos, and there's quite an interesting kind of dynamic in that. So 2 questions to each of you in this last 5 minutes, really. What's the common theme that you found in the last 55 minutes, and something that maybe has surprised you, or something you would like to find out more about from your own views. If I can ask, and maybe Lewis, can I ask you that first? So what's been common and what surprised you?
I think I'd already written this down, actually, something I was going to mention, that there was something that really struck a chord with me in your first video, Claire, which was that notion of young people seeing themselves as musicians. And I think that's definitely something that's common to all 4 projects that we've discussed today. And I'd take that further, actually. I think it's, there are parallels with conversations which I often have with classroom teachers, and I'm sure that you will have had these conversations as well, particularly at a primary level. The number of times I hear a classroom teacher say to me, "Oh, of course I'm not a musician," and that idea of they're not a musician. Well, would you ever hear a classroom teacher, discussing their teaching of maths or English and say, "Of course I'm not a mathematician"? That doesn't come up, does it? So that it's about skilling up those individuals and giving them the confidence to be musical and to be creative in the same way as that we are with young people in other ways, really. So and going back to Elfyn's comments earlier about giving them the permission really to make music and to be creative. So that I think certainly threads through all of those. In some ways, there's no surprises really, actually, because we talk with each other all the time, and there's loads of crossover between the work of, particularly in Devon and Dorset. Actually, Claire used to work for Devon, and we worked together briefly. When I arrived in Devon, we work with similar partner organisations. So B Sharp, for instance, we just work with B Sharp in East Devon, and they're just in the sort of just over the border in Dorset. I've got a meeting with Jason on Friday, actually, when I'll be able to see him, and we're having a chat about some work that he's doing in Devon. So, and Claire's a trustee of Daisy that had, delivered our programme in North Devon. So, there's a lot of crossover with all of those projects. So, but it's fascinating nonetheless. So,
thank you, Lewis. I'm looking at the clock. It's 16:57. Elfyn.
Okay. First thing, commonality is identity, I think, and so that's a commonality with what Lewis just said, which is identity as musicians, and also that music can help affirm or even give people an identity. So that's the common thing, I think. It's the self and also people together. The surprising thing, I'm not really surprised, but maybe it is surprising in the big thing, is that we come round and round to this idea of creativity, come round and round to this whole thing. I trained with London Sinfonietta in the 90s, and they were saying exactly the same thing as James has just been saying. If only we could get this going, if only could this going, if we only could do this. And people have been trying and battling to do it, and the tide has gone in, and the tide has come out, and the tide is going in. And so there's this constant thing, there's a constant negotiation that's happening between the kind of structures, if you like, the kind of the rigid structures of education, and the freedom is again the boulders, and the trying to flow between the boulders, trying to make creativity happen. And it's a cliche maybe, but it's a process. It's always a process. So we're always trying to make, and it's to do with confidence. So maybe it comes back to identity again. It's about affirmation. It's about maybe the difficulty is not helping young people to see themselves as musicians, but to actually help teachers to see themselves as musicians as well. I give over.
That's it. I think it's the same. You could say maybe empowerment. It's all linked to that permission, and we are all musicians. I'm someone that comes from a very informal, different musical background, and I think I now know I've got every right to be here leading a hub, trying to fight the fight for other approaches, just because there has been one dominant discourse throughout the whole sector. And so what just made me think, what surprises me, that it's taken this long, perhaps. I think that's what Elfyn was getting at. But I do think the new national plan will centre inclusion and creativity. And my cat feed is going off in the background, if you can hear.
And Jason, for you, just with the last kind of couple of minutes to finish off.
Yeah, I think the common thread, I'm very practical about this sort of stuff now, is workforce training. Everybody's talking about it. We've just got to get on and do it. You know, this idea of ebb and flow that Elfyn just talked about, that's got to stop. You know, we've got to catch up with what our client base requires, what the young people require. They know what they want, and we've got to train the staff to be able to provide it. And there's no ifs and buts about that anymore. We've just got to get on and do it, and it's absolutely doable. And you know, that has to be central to the support, I guess, that MEHs give to all music staff in their patches across the country. And then the thing that surprises me, and you've said it already, the thing that surprises me again and again and again is that this is taking forever, where the kids are moving on and doing their own things and being their own music makers, and we're playing catch up with the kids. Just very briefly, Youth Music did a report recently of 60,000 children nationwide, and they asked the question, what activities do you enjoy the most? And the top activity was gaming, and the second activity was music making, almost surpassing gaming. Now, that's not being panned out in the classroom. That's not being shown in the classroom. That's a hell of a lot of talent that isn't being tapped. So I say, let's catch up with the kids quick.
Thank you ever so much. I can't think of a better way to end what has been a really, really engaging hour. I think the variety that we've seen has been superb, but I think absolutely those core themes have come out across the whole piece. To those of you who've stayed with us and watched, we're slightly over time. Thank you so much for taking the time. Please get in contact with the panelists, with the music education hubs, your local hubs, if you're not from those patches, because you can clearly see the range of activity that is available out there. Thank you to all of you panelists for your contributions today. Thank you also to Holly, who has been posting everything behind the scenes. Just a final quick one, if you want to keep up to date with creative and cultural news kind of from the Southwest, then please do join our educators newsletter. Holly will put a link in the chat. But thank you very much to everybody. Enjoy your evenings, and yeah, let's catch up with the kids quickly. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.